Welcome to Next Steps, conversations to help you achieve your potential. My name is Stephen Bouchon, and I began these conversations to make a positive impact in the world by helping people achieve their potential. The second thing is what's important in the target role. Okay, so to understand what's important at that place you want to get to. And, a good way to go about doing this, and I've outlined it here in the template, is to think about having informational interviews, reading documents, meeting people who are doing this already, who are doing it in the place you want to get to, who are from the company you want to join, or who are in the function you want to be doing, and think about from them, when you're going through these interviews, there are different types of information. There are things that people will say. There are things that people will tell you. There are things that will be written about that you can write down, and you can write that down in sort of the appropriate box. And the boxes I have here is, the first one is about skills and competencies and strengths there. Another sort of category is what are the culture and behaviors that are necessary in that space. And then there's this thing of other things that you identify. And then again, going across the top are what's expressed, what are people saying or writing, what are you observing that's not expressed, and then what are you feeling? Using your intuition, often we only think that we gather information from our eyes, our ears, and our brain, but sometimes we get these feelings. It's our heart, it's our stomach. We get these feelings. We should pay attention to that. And so there's a segment out here for that. So you go into an interview and you talk with people, and talk with multiple people. Again, this may take time to set up and time to do, but allow yourself that time, because what you really want to do is understand what's required in that target place, that target space. And the reason you want to do that, if you recall, I said you'll have to do mapping, or you have to build a bridge from your context to the new context. And one thing's really important, these informational interviews can help you understand that new context. Okay, so go through that, think about that, fill it out on your own at first, and then have a couple of interviews, test it with people around you, people you might know. You might have contacts on LinkedIn or people that you're friends with on Facebook. So think about using that as a tool. And then after that, it's about a self-analysis of your own skills, your own competencies, what you have. I talked about the backpack metaphor. What you have in that backpack that you can bring to the new journey you're going to go on. So if we talk a little bit about the self-analysis, I also talk about a functional resume. Not necessarily that you're going to use the functional resume and that you're going to send out to somebody, but a functional resume, from my perspective, is important because it allows you to think about some of the base things, the competencies you have that can be translated to a new situation. If you just talk about the job you did, let's say you were a project manager. If you're not going for another project manager role, talking about being a project manager and using project manager terms and things like that probably isn't going to help you be successful thinking about something else. Myself, what I had, so for example, I was coming out of a role in strategic sourcing, and so it was within finance, and I was doing a lot of supply chain work, and I was going for a role in marketing. Well, coming from finance, sourcing, supply chain, talking about marketing, if I was to just rely on what we did in sourcing, saving the company hundreds of millions of dollars through more strategic, client, vendor relationships, that would have landed like a dull thud on the marketing executives. Okay. So what I did is I went back and said, so what are those things that I'm doing? So the way I like to think about it, This again, table is really easy to fill out for you. And again, these are available on my website. Breaking it down into different areas, sort of your work and professional skills and competencies, other experiences. Often people don't think about those other things they're doing outside of their job. So for example, let's say that you are like me, you love riding adventure motorcycles and you organize trips to the countryside, to the mountains, or to the desert. And what you do is you organize a huge event. You might not talk about that if you're going for a job interview. However, there are skills that you're using and competencies you've acquired in there that are really important to call forward. And then this last one I have here is how I am. Some people are calm. Some people are energetic. Some people are real drivers. Some people are more laid back. Some people are empathetic. Some people are very structured. So think about those elements of you, the way you are, your being, that you bring to a job. And then think about it in terms of this way. So skills and competencies. So what are they? Identify what they are. When and where demonstrated. So, I talked about having to be able to tell a story. The best way to tell a story is to have really concrete details. And when they're real, the passion, the interest comes across much more authentically. It's not like you're fabricating something. If it's a lived experience, you'll be able to communicate it a lot more readily. And then what were the outcomes and what were the results? And these don't all need to be positive. If they're all negative, that could be a signal of something else. But often we've learned from the outcome. So let's say that one of the things you had to do was to put into place a new system for managing human resources. And there was time and budget requirements. And 3/4 of the way through, the company you were working with went out of business. Their tool was no longer available. So you had to adjust. You had to think quickly how to, often in America we say make lemonade out of lemons. But how can you take that experience of where you are and have pragmatic optimism from that space with everything that's going right and going wrong? How do you chart your way forward? Okay, so that's a great learning and that's a great competency to have, to be able to, in a situation, a difficult situation, to identify multiple paths forward that allowed you to achieve goals. Okay, so that's what I mean by outcomes and results not always having to be positive. So once you have this together, now you have a pretty good idea of what your skills and strengths are, your competencies. You can tell the story of when and where it was demonstrated and what the outcomes were. Okay, really important for the story you're going to have to tell. Then another thing, and I mentioned earlier, is about how do you map across the roles, the current context to the future context. Okay, so what this is, and again you can see this on the screen, is to think about it. And I broke it up into these three areas. I broke it up into industry, the company and the department, and the job function. And again, if you're using this for something other than a new role, you can break it up differently. But when you think about the industry, what are the dynamics? Are you going from a fast-paced, growth-oriented, startup type of industry, and you're targeting a more stable, structured, process-focused industry? So that's why I have breaking it down to those three things and then looking what's your current context, and then what are the prospective context or the target, the context there. Think about the structure. Is it a hierarchical structure you're coming from, and your target is to go to a less hierarchical, faster moving structure? In the company or department, what's the position in the industry? What are the different dynamics within the company? Is it a company that's undergoing reorganization, or you want to get to a place that's reorganizing? What about the brand? Are you coming from a weaker brand and you want to get to a stronger brand? Or are you coming from a stronger brand and you want to help weaker brands grow? And then the last part is the area I talked about, job and function. So what's your position? Okay, how is that job, or how is that perceived within the company? How is that role perceived within the department? What's the importance of it? And what does how is that position fit into the value add of the business? Current, and then how do you see it happening in the future? So a lot of those things, so if you go back through those and you think about first your growth roadmap, what's important in the target role and the target function industry that you're going for. If you're a company, it's like, what's important, and you're trying to pivot your company as an entrepreneur, what's important for the consumers? What's important for the market you're getting to? And what are you bringing to it? So same sort of thing applies. Self-analysis, what are you good at? What are you bringing to the table? Where has it been demonstrated? And what were the outcomes? And then mapping current to future, the targets across it, describing the environment that's going to be worked upon. So once you have all of that, then you're ready to do probably one of the most important pieces. But since you've done the pre-work, this part should be easier, okay? It's about pulling everything together and telling the story, okay? And so what I did is I brought this about telling the story, again, grouped it up into the three things. First, think about yourself. Your purpose, values, skills, competencies. How are you being? How are you doing? So we did that in the self-reflection. Okay. Think about here, the person you're going to be talking to, the company, the industry. What's the background of the person that's there? What's important to them? You've done that through some informational interviews. You've identified some information there. And then the role, the function, and the vision. Not only sort of your vision of where you want to go, but what's the vision of that role? Is it a role? Very few things are static these days. So is it that the role is fixed? Or what are the steps? What are the different paths that you can envision? Not necessarily for yourself, but what are the paths that you can envision for the role, for the function within the department? Again, if you're shifting the company and you're an entrepreneur and you want to get into a new business, you're going to pivot, what are the growth opportunities that you see, the paths that you see forward given this new pivot? I'm not going to dive too much in there because that's a whole nother way of thinking about companies, and I work with entrepreneurs on that as well. So what do you think about that? And then bring those together into the story. What is the narrative that you're going to give? What is the story you're going to tell about making this change? Okay, it's a change of direction. You have to build a bridge for other people. You have to be able to explain why this makes sense, why you're the best person, you're the best company for this opportunity, and why it makes sense now. So there's a lot we just went through. I'm going to stop this video there. The next video, I think what I'll talk about is, I'm going to talk about when you don't know what the opportunity is, or you're just feeling stuck, and how you go about creating opportunities for yourself using a lot of these same tools. So again, thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope it can, as you go through the exercises, give it a try, see what comes out. Subscribe to the channel here. Put comments up. happy to answer back if you have questions. Download the resources, watch the videos again, and reach out if you have questions. If you want to engage in this conversation, reach out. Happy to continue the conversation so that we can help you achieve your next steps so that you can achieve your potential. Thank you.